On a freezing night in April 1912, a ship believed to be unsinkable disappeared into the darkness of the ocean. But what the world remembers is not just the sinking, it's the quiet decisions, the final moments, and the human stories that were never meant to be heard. The Titanic disaster was supposed to be a journey of hope. For many on board, it was the beginning of a new life. Some were traveling in luxury, enjoying fine dining, music, and comfort. Others had sold everything they owned just to afford a ticket, dreaming of a better future in America. But that night, all differences disappeared, because when disaster comes, it does not choose between rich or poor. For the first few days, everything felt perfect. The sea was calm, the air was still, and the massive ship moved forward with quiet confidence. People laughed, children played strangers, became friends. No one knew they were living their final peaceful hours. Then late into the night came a moment so small yet so powerful it would change everything. A sudden impact, not loud, not dramatic, just a strange, unsettling feeling.
Some passengers barely noticed. Others paused, looked around, unsure but deep below. The ocean had already begun to enter the ship. At first, the crew tried to stay calm. There was no immediate panic. People were told it was safer to stay where they were. And that made the truth even more heartbreaking, because time was slowly running out. As minutes passed, the reality became impossible to hide. Water was rising. The ship was not going to survive. Lifeboats were prepared, but there weren't enough. And in that moment, human nature revealed itself. Some people panicked, some stood frozen in fear, but others did something remarkable. They chose courage. There was a man traveling with his wife. They had spent years together, built a life, shared memories that only they understood. When the time came, she was offered a seat on a lifeboat, a chance to live. But she refused. She could not imagine a world without him in it. And so she stepped back and stayed by his side. No fear, no hesitation, just love, in its purest form, nearby. Something unexpected was happening. As fear spread across the ship, musicians gathered together. They began to play. Soft music, gentle, calming. Not because they were asked to, because they understood psalm. Ebbing deeper in a moment of chaos. They gave people peace. Even as the ship tilted. Even as the cold air filled with fear kept playing. And perhaps that music became the last comfort many people ever felt. There were also crew members, men who knew exactly what was coming. They guided passengers, helped children into lifeboats, reassured strangers. Even when they themselves had no chance of survival. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They stayed. Because sometimes true courage is not about saving yourself. It's about helping others. Even when you know the cost. As the ship slowly began to sink deeper into the ocean, the night grew colder. Families were separated. Hands slipped apart.
Voices called out into the darkness. Some prayed. Some cried. Some simply stood in silence. And then, in the early hours of the morning, it was over. The great ship was gone. All that remained was the cold ocean and the echoes of what had just happened. If you're listening to this right now, take a quiet moment and think about those people, not as history, but as real human beings, just like us. If you believe their stories should never be forgotten, you can support this by subscribing so more people remember. In the days that followed, survivors carried more than just memories. They carried guilt, grief, and questions that would never be fully answered. Why them, and not others? What could have been done differently? But among, the loss, there were also stories of incredible strength. People who helped strangers, shared lifeboats, comforted children who had lost everything. Because even in tragedy, humanity finds a way to survive. Years passed, then decades. The world changed. Wars came and went. Technology advanced. But the story of that night never faded, because it wasn't just about a ship. It was about people. About love that refused to let go. About courage. In the face of fear, about sacrifice. with no expectation of reward. And maybe that's why this story still matters today, because in our fast-moving world, we often forget the value of simple human choices. Kindness, loyalty, courage. These are not things of the past. They are choices we can still make every single day. More than 100 years have passed since that night, but somewhere, deep beneath the ocean, the memory still rests. The laughter, the music, the quiet goodbyes, and maybe the most powerful truth of all is this: even in the darkest moments, when everything feels lost, humanity still finds a way to shine. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because as long as we remember, they are never truly gone.